The morning sun blazed over Los Angeles International Airport as Min-Jun Park stepped out of his rideshare vehicle. He wore faded jeans, a gray hoodie, and old sneakers that had seen better days. His backpack was worn at the edges and dark circles shadowed his eyes. He had been awake for nearly 30 hours, flying between meetings in 3 different cities. All he wanted now was to get home. Min-Jun walked through the private terminal entrance, his shoulders hunched with exhaustion. The building was different from the main airport. Everything here spoke of money and privilege. Marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Leather sofas lined the walls. A few well-dressed people sat waiting, scrolling through their phones or reading newspapers. He approached the desk and showed his identification. The woman behind the counter smiled professionally and checked her computer. "Welcome, Mr. Park. Your aircraft is ready." "Gate 3. Thank you," Min-Jun said quietly. He adjusted his backpack and headed toward the gate. The walkway to the jet was short. Min-Jun climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling heavy. When he reached the entrance, a flight attendant stood waiting. Her name tag read, Jessica Torres. She wore a crisp uniform and had her hair pulled back perfectly. Her smile was bright and welcoming, but it disappeared the moment she saw him. Jessica's eyes traveled from Min-Jun's hoodie down to his worn sneakers. Her smile turned into a thin line. She stepped slightly to the side, blocking the entrance. "Excuse me," she said, her voice sharp. "Can I help you?" Min-Jun looked at her, confused. "I'm boarding this flight." Jessica's eyebrows rose. "This is a private charter. Are you sure you have the right plane?" "I'm sure," Min-Jun said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, showing her his boarding confirmation. Jessica barely glanced at it. "How did you get past security?" "I checked in at the desk. They sent me here." Jessica made a small sound in her throat. She looked over her shoulder into the cabin, then back at Min-Jun. "Do you have identification?" Min-Jun felt a familiar weight settle in his chest. He had experienced this before many times. People seeing his skin color and casual clothes and deciding he did not belong. He pulled out his wallet and showed her his ID. Jessica studied it longer than necessary. "Fine," she finally said, stepping aside. "Come in." Min-Jun entered the aircraft. The interior was beautiful. Cream-colored leather seats, polished wood trim, soft lighting. The smell of expensive perfume and fresh coffee filled the air. Several passengers were already seated, all dressed in business suits or designer clothes. They looked up as Min-Jun passed, some curious, others disinterested. Jessica followed close behind him. "You'll be in the back," she said, pointing toward the rear of the plane. Min-Jun looked around. The aircraft was nearly empty. At least 12 seats were available in the main cabin, which was more spacious and comfortable. "Is there a reason I need to sit in the back?" "Those seats are reserved," Jessica said quickly. "For who?" "For passengers who paid for premium placement." Min-Jun nodded slowly. He knew this was not true, but he was too tired to argue. He walked to the back and chose a seat by the window. As he sat down, he noticed Jessica whispering to another crew member, a younger woman with kind eyes. The young woman glanced at Min-Jun and looked uncomfortable. Jessica moved through the cabin, greeting the other passengers. Her voice became warm and friendly again. "Good morning, Mr. Chen. Can I get you some champagne?" To a woman in a red dress. "Ms. Anderson, so lovely to see you again. Your usual sparkling water?" Min-Jun watched this performance quietly. Each passenger received a genuine smile, a personal greeting, offers of drinks and snacks. Jessica laughed at their jokes and seemed genuinely happy to serve them. When she reached the back where Min-Jun sat, her expression changed again. It became blank and cold. She did not ask if he wanted anything. She simply walked past him to check the emergency exit. An older man sitting across the aisle from Min-Jun noticed this. He was Korean, perhaps 70 years old with silver hair and an expensive watch. He leaned toward Min-Jun. "Excuse me, young man. Would you like me to call her over? She seems to have forgotten to offer you a beverage." Min-Jun smiled tiredly. "It's okay. I'm fine." The older man frowned. "That's not right. Everyone should be treated the same." "I appreciate your concern," Min-Jun said gently. "Really, it's okay. I've dealt with worse." The older man looked troubled but nodded. He introduced himself as Mr. Kang, a businessman returning from meetings. Min-Jun shook his hand and introduced himself simply as Min-Jun, not mentioning his last name or his work. Jessica returned to the front of the cabin. She picked up the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard. We'll be departing shortly. Please ensure your seatbelts are fastened and all electronic devices are in airplane mode. We want to make sure all passengers follow the rules for everyone's safety. As she said this last part, her eyes fixed on Min-jun. Min-jun pulled out his phone and switched it to airplane mode, even though he had already done so. He did not want to give her any reason to complain. The jet's engines hummed to life. Through the window, Min-jun could see the ground crew moving away from the aircraft. The pilot's voice came through the speakers announcing their flight path and expected arrival time. Jessica walked through the cabin one more time before takeoff, checking that everyone was ready. She paused at each row in the main cabin, making small talk and ensuring passengers were comfortable. When she reached Min-jun's row, she barely glanced at him. She looked at his seatbelt, then at Mr. Kang's, and moved on without a word. Mr. Kang shook his head in disapproval. "Young man, you should report this behavior. It's discrimination." Min-jun pulled out his laptop from his backpack. "Maybe," he said quietly. "But right now I just need to get some work done." "What do you do for work?" Mr. Kang asked. "I'm in technology," Min-jun said, keeping his answer vague. He did not want to explain. He was tired of explaining. The jet began to taxi toward the runway. Min-jun opened his laptop and started typing. He was making notes, but not about his business meetings. He was documenting everything that had happened since he boarded. The time Jessica questioned his right to be there, her refusal to let him sit in the main cabin, the way she treated other passengers compared to him. He typed it all out in detail. Jessica passed by again, carrying a tray of champagne glasses for the passengers in the main cabin. She moved gracefully, her professional smile fixed in place. When she saw Min-jun with his laptop open, she slowed down. Her eyes narrowed slightly, as if suspicious of what he might be doing. Min-jun kept typing, not looking up. He had learned long ago that staying calm and documenting everything was more powerful than getting angry. Anger gave people like Jessica what they wanted, a reason to call him aggressive or difficult. But calm, detailed notes? Those could not be dismissed so easily. The jet reached the runway and paused. The engines roared louder, and then they were moving faster and faster, until the ground fell away and Los Angeles spread out below them like a map made of lights and shadows. Min-jun looked out the window at the city shrinking beneath them. He thought about the meeting he had just left, where he had signed papers to acquire a small aviation company. It had seemed like a good investment at the time. Now, sitting in the back of this jet, being treated like he did not belong, he wondered if he had made the right choice. But he already knew the answer. He had made exactly the right choice, and Jessica Torres was about to find out why. Once the jet reached cruising altitude, Jessica unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up. She smoothed her uniform and picked up her serving tray. The seatbelt sign dinged off and passengers began shifting in their seats, getting comfortable for the flight. Jessica started at the front of the cabin. She offered warm towels to the passengers, along with a selection of premium drinks. "We have champagne, wine, craft cocktails, or our specialty coffee," she said to each person, her voice warm and attentive. A woman in a business suit asked for a mimosa. Jessica prepared it perfectly, adding a twist of orange peel and serving it in a crystal glass. "Enjoy, Ms. Park," she said with a smile. The next passenger requested a whiskey neat. Jessica poured it carefully, using the expensive bottle from the top shelf. "Excellent choice, Mr. Yamamoto." She continued down the aisle, taking her time with each passenger. She knew their names, remembered their preferences, and made them feel special. This was the service that made private aviation worth the money, and Jessica was good at her job when she wanted to be. Mr. Kang watched Jessica work her way toward the back. He glanced at Min-jun, who was still focused on his laptop, typing steadily. Mr. Kang could see that the young man was being deliberately ignored, and it bothered him deeply. When Jessica finally reached their row, she looked at Mr. Kang with her professional smile. "What can I get for you, sir?" "I'll have green tea, please," Mr. Kang said. Then he gestured to Min-jun. "And my young friend here?" Jessica's smile tightened. She looked at Min-jun without warmth. "What would you like?" Min-jun looked up from his laptop. "Coffee, please, black." Jessica nodded and walked away. She returned a few minutes later with Mr. Kang's tea in a beautiful ceramic cup on a wooden tray. She placed it down carefully with a small bow. Then she turned to Min-jun and held out a plastic cup filled with coffee. No tray, no ceremony. Just a plain plastic cup, the kind used in hospital waiting rooms. Here, Jessica said flatly. Min Jun took the cup. Thank you. Mr. Kang stared at his elegant tea service, then at Min Jun's plastic cup. His face reddened with anger. Excuse me, miss, why is his coffee in a plastic cup while mine is in ceramic? Jessica's expression did not change. We're running low on ceramic cups. I have to save them for all passengers equally. The lie was obvious in her tone. That makes no sense, Mr. Kang said. I just saw you serve at least 6 other people. Are you telling me you only have 6 ceramic cups on this entire aircraft? I don't appreciate your tone, sir, Jessica said, her voice cool. I'm doing my best to serve everyone. Min Jun touched Mr. Kang's arm gently. It's fine, really, I don't mind. Mr. Kang looked at him with frustration. But it's not fine. This is wrong. Jessica turned and walked away, her posture stiff. Min Jun heard her mutter something under her breath to the other crew member, the young woman with kind eyes. The young woman looked uncomfortable and glanced back at Min Jun with an apologetic expression. Min Jun returned to his laptop. He added notes about the coffee service, the plastic cup, the difference in treatment. He saved the document carefully. An hour into the flight, Min Jun needed to use the restroom. He stood up and walked toward the front of the cabin where the facilities were located. As he passed through the main seating area, he noticed that Jessica was serving lunch to the other passengers. The food looked incredible, served on real plates with metal cutlery and cloth napkins. When Min Jun returned from the restroom, Jessica was waiting in the aisle near his seat. She held a packaged sandwich and a bottle of water. Here's your meal, she said, holding them out. Min Jun looked at the sandwich. It was the kind sold in airport vending machines wrapped in plastic. He looked toward the front of the cabin, where other passengers were eating fresh salads, pasta dishes, and grilled salmon. Is this what everyone is getting? Min Jun asked quietly. Jessica's eyes flashed. We have limited meals on board. I can't control what was stocked. But there are only 8 other passengers, and I saw at least 12 meal trays being loaded before we took off. Are you questioning my service? Jessica's voice rose slightly. Min Jun shook his head. I'm just trying to understand. What you need to understand, Jessica said, her voice tight with barely controlled anger, is that not everyone gets special treatment just because they think they're entitled to it. Some people need to remember their place. The cabin went quiet. Several passengers turned to look. Mr. Kang stood up, his face dark with fury. Young lady, what you just said is completely inappropriate. Jessica's face flushed. She realized she had gone too far, but instead of backing down, she doubled down. I'm simply maintaining order and ensuring that all passengers respect the rules of this aircraft. What rules? Mr. Kang demanded. The rule that says some passengers deserve dignity and others don't. Another passenger, a middle-aged woman in expensive jewelry, spoke up. I've been watching you for the past hour. You've treated this young man terribly. Why? Jessica looked around at the watching faces. She felt trapped. I treat everyone fairly. If anyone has a complaint, they can contact customer service after we land. She thrust the sandwich and water bottle toward Min Jun. Here's your food. Min Jun took them. Thank you, he said calmly. Jessica turned and walked quickly to the front galley. The young crew member followed her. Min Jun could see them talking urgently, the young woman shaking her head and gesturing. Jessica dismissed her with a wave of her hand. Min Jun sat down and unwrapped the sandwich. It was dry and unappetizing, but he was hungry, so he ate it. Mr. Kang refused to touch his own gourmet meal in protest, which Min Jun found both touching and unnecessary. Please, Mr. Kang, eat your food. There's no point in both of us being uncomfortable. Mr. Kang shook his head stubbornly. I cannot enjoy a meal while you are being treated this way. It's unconscionable. The woman in expensive jewelry leaned across the aisle. I'm going to report this when we land. That woman has no business working in customer service. I appreciate that, Min Jun said. But please don't let this ruin your flight. The woman studied him carefully. You're very calm about all this. Have you experienced this kind of treatment before? Min Jun smiled sadly. More times than I can count. That's terrible, she said softly. What do you do for work? I'm an entrepreneur. Technology sector. Successful? Min Jun shrugged. I do okay. The woman looked like she wanted to ask more questions, but something in Min Jun's expression made her stop. She nodded and returned to her meal. For the rest of the flight, Jessica avoided the back of the cabin entirely. She sent the young crew member to check on Minjun and Mr. Kang, but the young woman could only offer apologetic looks and quiet service. It was clear she disagreed with Jessica's behavior but felt powerless to stop it. Minjun continued working on his laptop. He pulled up financial reports, reviewed contracts, and sent several emails. He also opened a folder labeled Quality Assessment and added his detailed notes about the flight. He attached photos of the plastic cup, the vending machine sandwich, and screenshots of the booking confirmation, showing that all passengers had paid the same price for the same service. At one point, Jessica made an announcement over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be landing in approximately 30 minutes. Please ensure all personal belongings are stowed properly and your seats are in the upright position. We want to make sure all passengers follow proper procedures." Again, her eyes focused on Minjun as she said this. Minjun closed his laptop and stowed it in his backpack. He looked out the window as the jet began its descent. Below, he could see the city where he lived, where his company was headquartered, where he employed over 3,000 people. Mr. Kang leaned toward him. "Young man, I want you to have my contact information. I'm a lawyer. If you decide to take action against this airline for discrimination, I'll help you. No charge," Minjun smiled. "That's very kind, Mr. Kang, but I don't think I'll need a lawyer." "Why not?" "Because I believe in handling things directly." The jet touched down smoothly. As it taxied to the private terminal, Jessica stood at the front of the cabin with her professional smile back in place. "Thank you for flying with us today. We hope you enjoyed your flight and look forward to serving you again soon." When the jet came to a complete stop, Jessica opened the door and positioned herself to say goodbye to each passenger. She thanked them warmly, wished them well, and invited them to fly again. The passengers from the main cabin filed out first. Several of them paused to speak to Minjun as they passed. "I'm sorry about how you were treated," one man said. The woman in expensive jewelry squeezed his shoulder. "File a complaint. That behavior was inexcusable." Mr. Kang was the last passenger before Minjun. He stopped at the door and spoke to Jessica in a voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "You should be ashamed of yourself. That young man showed more class and dignity in 2 hours than you've shown in your entire career." Jessica's smile never wavered, but her eyes went cold. "Have a nice day, sir." When Minjun reached the door, Jessica's smile disappeared completely. She looked at him with barely concealed contempt. "Goodbye," she said flatly. Minjun paused and looked at her carefully. "What's your full name?" Jessica blinked, surprised. "Why?" "For my records," Jessica's lip curled. "Jessica Torres, you planning to complain? Go ahead. Do you know how many complaints I get from people like you? Nothing ever happens. I'm good at my job and my company knows it." Minjun nodded slowly. "Thank you for that information, Jessica Torres." He walked down the stairs and headed toward the terminal. Behind him, he heard Jessica laughing with the young crew member. "Can you believe that guy? Thinking he's so important, like anyone's going to care about his complaint." Minjun kept walking. He pulled out his phone and opened his contacts. He scrolled to a name. Soo-Young Kim, Director of Operations. He typed a brief message. "Please pull all footage and reports from today's flight. Charter JT 447. We need to discuss crew performance. Meeting tomorrow 9 a.m. The response came quickly. "Of course, Mr. Park, is there a problem?" Minjun looked back at the jet, where Jessica was still standing in the doorway laughing. "Yes," he typed. "There's definitely a problem." Jessica Torres felt good as she walked through the airport terminal. The flight had landed smoothly, and despite that difficult passenger in the back, everything had gone well. She pulled out her phone and texted her friend Maria, another flight attendant. "Just dealt with another one who thought he belonged in first class. Some people really need to know their place." Maria's response came quickly. "Girl, you're savage. Didn't you just get written up last month?" Jessica frowned at her phone. "That was different. And it was dropped. I'm telling you. Management knows I'm one of their best. They're not going to fire me over some random complaint." She walked into the crew lounge and found several other flight attendants gathered around the coffee machine. Jessica joined them and immediately launched into her story. "You won't believe the passenger I had today," she said, pouring herself coffee. "This guy gets on the plane looking like he just rolled out of bed. Hoodie, old backpack, the works. And he has the nerve to act like he belongs there. One of the other attendants, a woman named Rachel, raised her eyebrows. On a private charter? Exactly. I don't know how he got a ticket, but he was completely out of place. I had to keep an eye on him the whole flight. Rachel looked uncomfortable. Jessica, you can't judge people by how they dress. Some of the richest people I've served dress like they're going to the gym. Jessica waved her hand dismissively. Please, I know the difference. This guy was definitely not supposed to be there. And he had the attitude to match. Kept questioning everything, making a scene. Another attendant, May, spoke up quietly. Did he actually make a scene, or did you? Jessica's eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, May said, looking away. I just think we should be careful about treating people differently based on assumptions. Jessica laughed. You're too soft, May. This job requires instincts. You have to know who the real clients are and who's just along for the ride. She finished her coffee and checked her schedule. She had 3 days off starting tomorrow, and she was looking forward to them. She planned to go to the beach, maybe do some shopping. The incident on the plane was already fading from her mind. Meanwhile, in a glass office building downtown, Min-Jun Park sat in a conference room with his business partner and friend, Jin-Woo Lee. They were reviewing documents from Min-Jun's recent business trip, including the acquisition papers for the aviation company. Jin-Woo noticed that Min-Jun seemed distracted. Everything okay? The deal went through, right? The deal's fine, Min-Jun said. But we might have a problem with company culture. What do you mean? Min-Jun told him about the flight, describing Jessica's behavior in detail. Jin-Woo's expression grew darker as the story continued. Are you serious? On our own plane? Technically, we just bought the company yesterday. The employees don't know about the ownership change yet. The announcement goes out next week. Jin-Woo leaned back in his chair. So she treated you like that, not knowing you're the new owner? She treated me like that because of how I look and what I was wearing. The ownership is irrelevant. What are you going to do? Min-Jun was quiet for a moment. I'm meeting with the director of operations tomorrow. So-Young Kim, I want to review the flight footage and see how we should handle this. You're going to fire her, right? Maybe. But I want to understand if this is an isolated incident or a systemic problem. If other crew members behave this way, we need to address the whole culture, not just one person. Jin-Woo shook his head. You're more patient than I would be. If someone treated me like that, I'd fire them immediately. Anger doesn't solve problems, Jin-Woo. It just makes you feel better temporarily. I want to solve the actual problem. The next morning, So-Young Kim arrived at the company's office building for her 9 a.m. meeting. She had been with the aviation company for 15 years, working her way up from flight attendant to director of operations. She was professional, fair, and deeply committed to excellent service. When she received Min-Jun's message the previous evening, she had been concerned. She immediately pulled the flight records, video footage, and crew reports. What she saw troubled her deeply. Min-Jun greeted her in the conference room. Thank you for coming, Ms. Kim. Of course, Mr. Park. So-Young set down her laptop and tablet. I've reviewed everything from yesterday's flight. Before we begin, I want to apologize. The service you received was completely unacceptable. Tell me what you saw. So-Young opened her laptop and pulled up the footage. The problem started the moment you boarded. She played the video, showing Jessica's initial reaction to seeing Min-Jun, her reluctance to let him on the plane, her excessive questioning. She violated at least 6 company policies in the first 3 minutes, So-Young said. She questioned a verified passenger's right to board, demanded unnecessary identification checks, and failed to provide the standard greeting and welcome service. She continued through the footage, pointing out each incident, the seating assignment, the lack of beverage service, the plastic cup, the vending machine sandwich while other passengers received gourmet meals, the passive-aggressive announcements, the confrontation with Mr. Kang. This is the worst case of discriminatory service I've seen in my 15 years with this company, So-Young said quietly, and I'm ashamed that it happened on my watch. Min-Jun watched the footage carefully. Seeing it from the outside perspective was different from experiencing it. On the screen, Jessica's bias was obvious and undeniable. Her body language, her tone, her choices, they all showed clear discrimination. Has she done this before? Min-Jun asked. So-Young pulled up another file. Jessica Torres has been with us for 3 years. She's received 7 complaints in that time. all related to treatment of passengers she perceived as, her words, not fitting the profile. 4 were dismissed due to lack of evidence. 3 resulted in written warnings. The last one was 2 months ago. Why wasn't she terminated? Soo-young looked uncomfortable. The previous management felt she was too valuable to lose. Jessica is excellent at serving high-profile clients. She's charming, attentive, and remembers details. Several regular clients specifically request her. Management decided that the complaints were isolated incidents, personality conflicts rather than systematic discrimination. But you don't agree with that assessment? No, I don't. I think Jessica is skilled at treating people well when she believes they're important. But she has clear biases against people she deems unworthy of her service. That's not isolated. That's a fundamental problem with her character. Min-jun nodded. What would you recommend? Soo-young took a breath. Termination immediately. She's had multiple warnings, she's shown no improvement, and this latest incident is severe enough to justify immediate dismissal. We could also face legal action if we don't take strong action. What about the other crew member on the flight? The younger woman? That's Hae-won Choi. She's been with us for 8 months. According to her report, she was very uncomfortable with Jessica's behavior and tried to intervene several times, but Jessica is her supervisor and shut her down. Hae-won actually came to my office last night and submitted a formal complaint about the incident. She was in tears, saying she was ashamed to be part of what happened. So she recognized that the behavior was wrong. Yes, Hae-won is a good employee. She's kind, professional, and treats all passengers equally. She's exactly the kind of person we want representing this company. Min-jun stood and walked to the window looking out at the city. Ms. Kim, do you know why I bought this company? I assumed it was a good investment. Partly. But the real reason is that I've experienced what happened on that flight dozens of times throughout my life. On planes, in hotels, in stores, in meetings. People see my skin color or my casual clothes and decide I don't belong. They treat me like I'm a problem to be managed rather than a person to be respected. He turned back to face her. I built my company from nothing. I'm worth more money than I can spend in 10 lifetimes. But none of that matters when someone like Jessica Torres looks at me and sees only what she wants to see. Her assumptions. Her prejudices. Soo-young listened carefully. I bought this aviation company because I want to create something better, Min-jun continued. A company where every passenger, regardless of how they look or dress or what assumptions people make about them, receives the same excellent service. Where dignity is the default, not a privilege reserved for people who look a certain way. That's a beautiful vision, Mr. Park. But I can't build that if the people working here don't share that vision. Jessica Torres doesn't just have a customer service problem. She has a character problem. And character problems don't fix themselves with written warnings, Soo-young nodded. So you want to terminate her? Min-jun sat back down. I want to meet with her first. Soo-young looked surprised. You want to meet with her? Why? Because I want to understand. I want to know if she realizes what she did wrong. If she's capable of recognizing her own bias. And I want to give her a choice about what happens next. What kind of choice? That depends on what I see when I talk to her. Can you arrange a meeting? Don't tell her who I am or that I'm the new owner. Just tell her she needs to come in to discuss a passenger complaint. Of course. When? Today. This afternoon if possible. Soo-young checked her tablet. Jessica is off today, but I can call her in. Company policy allows me to require attendance for disciplinary meetings even on scheduled days off. Make it happen. And Miss Kim? I want you in the meeting with me. Absolutely. After Soo-young left, Jin-woo came into the conference room. How did it go? Exactly as bad as I thought. Maybe worse. Option 1. I terminate you immediately. You receive your final paycheck and a standard severance package. Your employment file will reflect termination for discrimination and violation of company service standards. That will make finding another job in this industry difficult, but not impossible. Jessica nodded, accepting this as the likely outcome. Option 2. You accept a 6-month probationary reassignment. You'll be moved to ground services at minimum wage, baggage handling, customer service at the terminal desk, wheelchair assistance, whatever tasks are needed. You'll work alongside the people you've probably never noticed because they don't fit your definition of important. You'll complete mandatory bias training every week. You'll meet with a counselor who specializes in unconscious bias. And at the End of 6 months, if you've shown genuine growth and change, not just compliance, I'll consider allowing you to return to cabin crew. Not as a senior flight attendant, but as a trainee starting over. Jessica stared at him. You're offering me a chance to keep my job. I'm offering you a chance to become the kind of person who deserves to keep this job. The choice is yours. But I want to be clear. This isn't a gift. It's an opportunity to do very hard work on yourself. You'll be making minimum wage in California, which is not easy to live on. You'll be doing physical labor. You'll be serving people who might treat you the way you treated me, and you'll have to respond with grace and professionalism. You'll have to face your own biases every single day and actively work to change them. Why would you offer me this? Jessica asked. After what I did to you? Min-jun leaned back in his chair. Because I believe people can change, but only if they truly want to. I don't know if you want to change or if you just want to avoid consequences. This probation will show me which one it is. If you choose this option and you fail, if you show the same biased behavior or if you don't engage genuinely with the training, you'll be terminated anyway. And at that point, there will be no severance, no references, nothing. You'll have wasted 6 months for nothing. And if I succeed? If you genuinely change, if you learn to see people as individuals worthy of respect regardless of how they look or what assumptions you make about them, then you can build a new career here, but it won't be the same career you had before. You'll start at the bottom again. You'll have to earn back trust. Is that something you're willing to do? Jessica's mind raced. 6 months at minimum wage would be brutal. She had rent, car payments, credit card bills. Her lifestyle depended on her current salary and tips from wealthy clients. But the alternative was unemployment and a damaged reputation. More than that, though, watching that video had shaken something in her. Seeing herself through someone else's eyes, seeing the cruelty she had displayed so casually, had cracked something open inside her. She didn't know if she could change. She wasn't even sure what change would look like. But the idea of facing herself every day, of doing hard work to become better, felt like something she needed. I'll do it, Jessica said. I'll take the probation. I'll do the work. Min-jun studied her carefully. Are you sure? This isn't going to be easy. It would be simpler to take the severance and start fresh somewhere else. I'm sure, Jessica said, and she was surprised to find that she meant it. I need to do this, not for the job, but for me, because I don't want to be the person I saw in that video. Soo-young pulled out a new set of documents. If you're accepting the probationary reassignment, you'll need to sign this agreement. It outlines all the terms Mr. Park described. You'll report to the ground services manager tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Your first assignment will be baggage handling. You'll work 8-hour shifts, 5 days a week. Your weekly bias training sessions are mandatory and will be on your own time. Missing any session or failing to engage seriously will result in immediate termination. Do you understand? I understand, Jessica said. She read through the document carefully, seeing her reduced salary in black and white, seeing the terms of her probation spelled out clearly. When she reached the signature line, her hand shook slightly. This was real. She was about to sign away her comfortable position, her good salary, her status. But she signed it. Because the alternative was walking away and never knowing if she could have been better. Min-jun watched her sign, then stood and extended his hand. Jessica looked at it surprised, then shook it. I hope you succeed, Jessica, Min-jun said. I genuinely do, because this company needs people who have learned these lessons the hard way, people who understand what discrimination feels like from both sides. If you can make it through these 6 months, if you can genuinely change, you'll be a better flight attendant than you ever were before. Thank you, Jessica said quietly. I know I don't deserve this chance, but I'm going to try my best not to waste it. After Jessica left the conference room, Soo-young turned to Min-jun. That was generous of you. More generous than I would have been. Maybe, Min-jun said. Or maybe I'm just curious to see if people really can change when given the right motivation. Do you think she will? Change, I mean. Min-jun looked out the window at the city below. I don't know, but I gave her the chance. What she does with it is up to her. The alarm clock screamed at 4:30 a.m. Jessica Torres hit the snooze button, then remembered she couldn't afford to be late. Not on her first day. She dragged herself out of bed, her body protesting the early hour. 3 months ago, she would have been getting ready for a luxury flight, choosing jewelry to match her uniform, preparing to serve champagne to wealthy passengers. Now she pulled on cargo pants, a company polo shirt, and steel-toed boots. Her reflection in the mirror looked tired and plain. Jessica arrived at the airport ground services building at 5:45 a.m. The facility was behind the main terminals, a utilitarian building where passengers never went. Inside, 24 workers were preparing for the day shift. They spoke in different languages, laughed at jokes she didn't understand, and barely noticed her. The ground services manager, a man named Carlos Rodriguez, looked up from his clipboard when she entered. "You must be Jessica. You're the one on probation." "Yes, sir. I read your file. You treated passengers like dirt because of how they looked." Carlos's expression was hard. "I want you to know, I didn't agree with giving you this chance. I think people like you should just be fired. But Mr. Park believes in second chances, so here you are." Jessica nodded, accepting his judgment. "I understand. You'll be working with baggage today, unloading, loading, transporting. It's physical work. Can you handle it?" "I'll do my best." "Your best better be good enough." Carlos assigned her to a crew of 3 men who handled baggage for the private terminals. They introduced themselves briefly, their expressions neutral. They had heard about her too. The work started immediately. A jet landed, and the crew rushed out to unload 40 pieces of luggage, some weighing over 50 pounds. Jessica grabbed a bag and nearly dropped it. She hadn't realized how heavy they were. "Use your legs, not your back," one of her crew members called out. His name was David, and he had been doing this job for 12 years. Jessica adjusted her grip and lifted properly. Her muscles screamed. By the time they finished unloading the first flight, sweat poured down her back and her arms shook. "We've got 6 more flights this morning," David said, seeing her exhausted expression. "You going to make it?" "Yes," Jessica said through gritted teeth. The day continued in a blur of physical labor. Loading, unloading, transporting luggage on carts, running to meet tight connection times. Jessica's manicured nails broke. Her carefully maintained hands became rough and dirty. Her feet ached in the steel-toed boots. During her lunch break, she sat on a concrete curb outside the building, eating a sandwich she had packed from home. She couldn't afford to buy lunch anymore. Her reduced salary meant cutting back on everything, eating basic meals, skipping her usual shopping trips, canceling subscriptions she didn't really need. David sat down next to her. "First day is always the hardest." "I don't think I can do this for 6 months," Jessica admitted. "You signed a contract. You don't have much choice." "Why are you being nice to me? You know what I did." David was quiet for a moment. "Because I've been on the receiving end of what you did. I'm Filipino. I've had flight attendants treat me like I'm invisible, like I'm not worth their time. I've been questioned, dismissed, made to feel small." He looked at her directly. "But I also believe people can learn if they're willing to suffer for it. Right now you're suffering. The question is whether you're learning." Jessica thought about that as she finished her sandwich. Was she learning, or just enduring? That evening, Jessica attended her first bias training session. The counselor was a woman named Dr. Yoon, a psychologist who specialized in unconscious bias and discrimination. 6 other people attended the session, all employees who had been flagged for various incidents. "Bias isn't always conscious," Dr. Yoon explained. "Most of us don't wake up thinking we're going to discriminate against someone, but our brains make rapid judgments based on appearance, and those judgments are influenced by stereotypes, media representation, personal experiences, and societal messages we've absorbed our whole lives." She put up an image of 2 men. One was white, wearing a suit. One was black, wearing a hoodie. If I told you one of these men is a CEO and one is a delivery driver, which would you assume is which? Several people, including Jessica, pointed to the white man in the suit as the CEO. And that's the problem, Dr. Yoon said. Our assumptions. In reality, both these men are CEOs of successful companies. But we've been trained to associate certain appearances with certain roles, certain levels of success, certain levels of respect. The session continued for 2 hours. Dr. Yoon made them examine their own biases, confront uncomfortable truths about their automatic thoughts, and discuss real situations where their assumptions had been wrong. Jessica left the session feeling raw and exposed. Confronting her own thought patterns, acknowledging how deeply her biases ran, was painful. It would have been easier to just say she had made a mistake and move on, but the training forced her to sit with her discomfort, to really examine why she thought the way she did. The weeks continued in this pattern: physical labor during the day, training sessions in the evening, exhaustion always. Jessica lost weight. Her body grew stronger, but constantly ached. She learned to live on less money, to find satisfaction in simple things, to appreciate rest. But the hardest lessons came from the people around her. The ground services crew gradually warmed to her as they saw she wasn't giving up. They shared their own stories, experiences of being dismissed or treated poorly by people who judged them based on their job, their accent, their appearance. Maria, a woman who cleaned the aircraft interiors, told Jessica about being invisible. Passengers walk right past me like I'm furniture. Sometimes they leave trash on their seats and look me in the eye while doing it, like they're showing me my place. Roberto, who drove the fuel trucks, talked about being questioned by security regularly. I've worked here 15 years, but because I'm Mexican, I still get stopped and asked to prove I'm supposed to be here. The white guys on my crew never get stopped. Listening to these stories, Jessica began to understand what Min-jun had experienced on that flight. Not just the immediate disrespect, but the accumulated weight of a lifetime of similar moments. Being questioned, being dismissed, being made to feel like you don't belong, over and over again. One morning, about 2 months into her probation, Jessica was assigned to wheelchair assistance. She helped elderly passengers and people with mobility issues navigate the airport. One passenger was an older black woman traveling alone. She was well-dressed and polite, but Jessica noticed other airport staff treating her dismissively, assuming she needed more help than she actually did, speaking to her like she was a child. Jessica felt a flash of recognition. She had done the same thing, made assumptions based on appearance rather than treating people as individuals. She made sure to ask the woman what she needed rather than assuming. She spoke to her respectfully, as an equal. When they reached the woman's gate, she thanked Jessica warmly. "You treated me like a person today. You don't know how rare that is. Thank you." Jessica felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm the one who should thank you. You taught me something important." By month 3, Jessica's perspective had fundamentally shifted. The physical work no longer seemed as difficult. Her body had adjusted, but more importantly, her mind had adjusted. She found herself noticing things she had never seen before. The hierarchies in the workplace, the way certain people were valued more than others, the casual disrespect directed at workers considered lower status. She also noticed her own reactions changing. When she saw passengers now, she didn't automatically judge them by their clothes or appearance. She found herself curious about their stories instead of making assumptions. She caught herself when old thought patterns emerged and consciously redirected them. In her training sessions with Dr. Yoon, Jessica became one of the most engaged participants. She asked hard questions, challenged her own thinking, and shared her experiences honestly, even when they made her look bad. "I think I'm starting to understand," Jessica told Dr. Yoon during one session. "It's not just about treating people equally. It's about recognizing that everyone has inherent dignity and worth, regardless of what I think about them or what assumptions I make. Their value doesn't depend on my assessment of them." Dr. Yoon smiled. "That's exactly right. That's the shift we're working toward." But month 4 brought a real test. Jessica was working the customer service desk when a young black man approached. He was dressed casually, wearing headphones, and looked tired. Immediately, Jessica felt her old patterns trying to activate, assumptions trying to form. She took a breath and pushed them aside. "Good morning. How can I help you today?" The young man smiled. I'm trying to find the private terminal. I have a flight leaving in an hour. Jessica's old self would have questioned whether he really had a flight, would have made him prove it. Instead, she pulled up the terminal map and showed him the quickest route. It's about a 10-minute walk, or I can call a cart for you if you'd prefer. Walking is fine, thank you so much. As he walked away, Carlos appeared beside Jessica. He had been watching. Good job. You didn't hesitate. I almost did, Jessica admitted. My brain wanted to make assumptions, but I caught it. That's what matters. Catching it and choosing differently. Month 5 was when Jessica started to wonder if she actually wanted to go back to being a flight attendant. The ground services work had taught her things about herself, about empathy, about the value of all kinds of labor. She had developed friendships with people she would have ignored before. She had learned to find satisfaction in simple service rather than in status. During a meeting with Soo-young Kim to discuss her progress, Jessica voiced this uncertainty. I don't know if I want my old job back. Soo-young raised her eyebrows. Really? Why not? Because I'm not sure I'd be good at it anymore. I mean, I'd be good at the technical parts, but the person I was before, the person who valued certain passengers over others, who found identity in serving important people, I don't want to be her again. What do you want instead? Jessica thought carefully. I want to do work that matters, work where I'm helping people, all people, without judgment. Maybe that's still being a flight attendant, but different. Or maybe it's something else entirely. Soo-young made notes. That's something to explore. Mr. Park will want to hear this. Month 6 arrived faster than Jessica expected. Her probationary period was almost over. She had completed all her training sessions, maintained excellent performance, reviews from Carlos, and received positive feedback from the passengers and coworkers she served. On the final day of her probation, Jessica was called to a meeting with Min-jun Park, Soo-young Kim, and Dr. Yoon. She walked into the conference room nervous but not afraid. She had done the work. Whether they believed she had changed, she knew she had. Min-jun gestured for her to sit. Jessica, we've been reviewing your progress over these 6 months. Dr. Yoon, would you share your assessment? Dr. Yoon opened her folder. Jessica has shown remarkable growth. In our initial sessions, she was defensive and focused primarily on avoiding consequences. But over time, I've watched her engage deeply with difficult material, challenge her own thinking, and demonstrate genuine changes in perspective and behavior. Her participation has been exemplary. Soo-young spoke next. Carlos Rodriguez, who initially opposed giving you this chance, has submitted a report saying you're one of the hardest working, most conscientious employees in his department. He said you treat everyone with respect, you never complain, and you've become someone the team actually values. Min-jun looked at Jessica. 6 months ago, I gave you a choice. You chose to do the hard work. The question now is whether you've truly changed or just learned to hide your biases better. So I'm going to ask you directly. Have you changed? Jessica met his eyes. Yes, but not in the way I expected. I thought change would mean learning to treat all passengers equally, like following a new set of rules. But real change has been deeper than that. It's been learning to see people differently, to question my automatic thoughts, to recognize that my judgments about others say more about me than about them. She paused, gathering her thoughts. I'm not perfect now. I still catch myself making assumptions sometimes, but now I notice it and I correct it. And I've learned that everyone deserves dignity and respect, not because of who they are or what they've achieved, but simply because they're human. Min-jun nodded slowly. What do you want to do now? Your probation is complete. You have options. Jessica took a deep breath before answering Min-jun's question. 6 months ago, she would have immediately asked to return to her flight attendant position, to reclaim her status and comfortable salary. But the woman sitting in this conference room was different from the one who had walked out 6 months earlier. I've been thinking about this a lot, Jessica said. Part of me wants to prove I can be a good flight attendant now, that I've learned enough to serve passengers the right way. But another part of me wonders if there's a better way I can use what I've learned. What do you mean? Soo-young asked. These 6 months have been the hardest of my life. Not just physically, but emotionally, having to face my own biases. To see myself clearly for the first time, to understand the harm I caused, it was painful, but it was necessary. Jessica looked at each person in the room. I think there are probably other employees like me. People who have biases they don't even recognize, who treat others poorly without realizing it. What if I could help them learn what I learned, but maybe in a less punishing way? Minjun leaned forward, interested. You want to work in training? Maybe. I don't know if I'm qualified, but I know I could share my story, my experience. Sometimes hearing from someone who's been where you are is more powerful than hearing from an expert who's never made those mistakes. Dr. Yoon spoke up. Actually, that's an excellent idea. Peer education is often very effective in bias training. People can dismiss experts as preachy or out of touch, but they have a harder time dismissing someone who's walked in their shoes. Minjun and Soo-young exchanged a look. Soo-young nodded slightly. Jessica, Minjun said. 3 weeks ago, Soo-young and I discussed creating a new position in the company, Director of Diversity and Inclusion. The job would involve developing training programs, reviewing company policies, investigating discrimination complaints, and working with all departments to create a more equitable workplace culture. Jessica's eyes widened. That sounds like important work. It is. And we've been trying to figure out who should fill this role. We interviewed several candidates with impressive credentials. People with degrees in diversity studies, years of experience in corporate training. They were all qualified on paper. Minjun paused. But none of them had what you have. Direct, personal experience with both causing harm and doing the work to change. None of them could speak from the inside about how discrimination operates and how transformation happens. Are you offering me that position? Jessica asked, her voice barely a whisper. Not yet, Minjun said. What I'm offering is a trial period. 3 months as Assistant Director of Diversity and Inclusion, working directly with Dr. Yoon and Soo-young. You'd help develop training programs, participate in policy reviews, and yes, share your story with other employees. If after 3 months you've demonstrated that you can do this work effectively, we'd consider promoting you to the director role. Jessica felt overwhelmed. I don't have a degree in this. I don't have training credentials. Why would employees listen to me? Because you're real, Dr. Yoon said. Because you're not going to lecture them from a place of superiority. You're going to stand in front of them and say, I made terrible mistakes, I hurt people, and here's how I'm working to become better. That authenticity is powerful, Soo-young added. And you won't be doing this alone. Dr. Yoon will continue as our primary consultant. I'll oversee policy implementation. We'll bring in other experts as needed. You'd be part of a team, not carrying this alone. But why me? Jessica asked. After what I did to you, Mr. Park, why would you trust me with something this important? Minjun was quiet for a long moment. Because 6 months ago I made a bet. I bet that if given the right circumstances, even someone who had caused real harm could choose to become better. I bet that transformation was possible. You've spent 6 months proving me right. Now I want to see if we can scale that transformation. If your experience can help others avoid making the mistakes you made. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the airport in the distance. When I bought this company, I said I wanted to create a place where every person, regardless of how they look or what assumptions others make about them, receives the same dignity and respect. I can't do that alone. I need people who understand viscerally why that matters, who've seen both sides, who've done the hard work of change. Jessica felt tears welling up. I'll do it. I'll try. I can't promise I'll be perfect at it. But I'll work as hard at this as I worked at everything else these past 6 months. That's all I ask, Minjun said. Over the next 3 months, Jessica threw herself into her new role. She worked with Dr. Yoon to develop a comprehensive bias training program. But unlike typical corporate trainings that felt obligatory and were easily forgotten, this program was different. Jessica opened each session by standing in front of employees and showing them the video of her behavior on that flight 6 months ago. She didn't hide from it. She let them see her at her worst, treating Minjun with contempt, making assumptions, letting her biases control her actions. Then she told them her story. The confrontation with Minjun. The choice he gave her. The 6 months of physical labor and emotional work. The slow, painful process of recognizing her own biases and learning to see people differently. I'm not standing here as someone who's perfect now, she told one group of flight attendants. I still catch myself making assumptions. My brain still tries to categorize people based on appearance. But now I notice it. I question it. I choose differently. And that's what I'm asking you to do. The response was powerful. Employees who had sat through dozens of mandatory trainings suddenly paid attention. Some cried. Others asked questions. Many approached Jessica afterward to share their own experiences, either as victims of bias or as people who recognized themselves in her story. One flight attendant named Michelle pulled Jessica aside after a training session. I needed to hear this. I've been treating certain passengers differently and telling myself it's just good customer service, prioritizing the important clients. But watching your video, I saw myself. I don't want to be that person. You don't have to be, Jessica said. The fact that you're recognizing it now means you can change it. Jessica also worked with Sue Young to review company policies. They found numerous places where bias could enter the system, from hiring practices to promotion criteria to customer service protocols. Together, they rewrote policies to emphasize equality and dignity for everyone, employees and passengers alike. She investigated discrimination complaints with fairness, but also with understanding. When employees made mistakes, she didn't immediately push for termination. Instead, she asked the same question Min Jun had asked her. Can this person change? Do they want to change? Some people, she found, couldn't or wouldn't change. They were too comfortable with their biases, too defensive, too convinced they were right. Those people were let go. But others like her were given chances to do the hard work of transformation. 3 months passed quickly. Jessica's trial period ended, and once again she found herself in a meeting with Min Jun, Sue Young, and Dr. Yoon. The feedback has been overwhelmingly positive, Sue Young reported. Employees say the new training is the first they've actually found meaningful. We've seen a 90% reduction in discrimination complaints since the program started, and the complaints we do receive are being handled more effectively. Dr. Yoon added, Jessica has exceeded my expectations. She's developed into a skilled facilitator, a thoughtful policy analyst, and most importantly, a living example of how change is possible. I recommend making her position permanent. Min Jun looked at Jessica. Do you want the position permanently? Yes, Jessica said without hesitation. This work matters. It's the most meaningful thing I've ever done. Every time an employee tells me the training made them think differently, every time someone catches their own bias and chooses better, I feel like I'm paying forward the chance you gave me. Then the job is yours, Min Jun said. Welcome to your new role as Director of Diversity and Inclusion. Jessica felt a wave of emotion. 6 months ago, she had been at her lowest point, facing the consequences of her own prejudice. Now she had been given not just a second chance, but a purpose. 1 year after that fateful flight, Min Jun held a company-wide meeting at the aviation headquarters. He stood before hundreds of employees and shared his vision for the company's future. When I bought this company, I did it because I experienced discrimination on one of our flights. I could have simply fired the employee responsible and moved on. But I chose to offer a different path, an opportunity for transformation rather than just punishment. I want to tell you why. He gestured to Jessica, who stood to the side of the stage. Jessica Torres was the flight attendant who discriminated against me. She treated me with contempt because of the color of my skin and the clothes I wore. She made assumptions about who I was and what I deserved. Her behavior was unacceptable. The room was silent. Every eye was on Jessica. But I gave her a choice, Min Jun continued. I asked her to do the hardest thing possible, to truly examine herself, to confront her biases, to change from the inside out. And she did it. She spent 6 months doing difficult, humbling work. She attended training sessions, learned about the harm she had caused, and fundamentally changed her perspective. He looked at Jessica with respect. Today, Jessica is our Director of Diversity and Inclusion. She's developed training programs that are transforming our company culture. She's helped dozens of employees recognize and address their own biases. She's become one of the most valuable members of our leadership team, not despite her past mistakes, but because of them, because she learned from them. Min Jun addressed the entire room. We all make mistakes. We all have biases whether we recognize them or not. The question is what we do with them. Do we hide them? Defend them? Or do we have the courage to examine them, acknowledge the harm they cause, and do the work to change? He smiled. This company is going to be a place where change is possible. where accountability doesn't just mean punishment, where we believe in people's capacity to grow. But that requires everyone here to commit to doing their own work, examining their own biases, treating every person with dignity. After the meeting, several employees approached Jessica. Some thanked her for her honesty. Others asked how they could examine their own biases. A few shared their own stories of discrimination, both as perpetrators and victims. One young ground services worker, a woman named Rosa, waited until everyone else had left. "Miss Torres, I need to tell you something. A year ago, I was on your crew for the flight where you treated Mr. Park badly. I'm Haewon Choi, do you remember me?" Jessica's eyes widened. The young flight attendant who had looked uncomfortable, who had tried to intervene. "Haewon, yes. I remember you tried to stop me." "I didn't try hard enough," Haewon said. "I saw what you were doing and I knew it was wrong, but I was scared of you. You were my supervisor. I was new. I didn't want to cause problems. So I stayed silent. I've been carrying guilt about that for a year." Jessica pulled her into a hug. "You reported what happened afterward. You did the right thing in the end. Don't carry guilt for my actions. But I could have stopped it in the moment. Maybe, or maybe I wouldn't have listened." Haewon, one thing I've learned is that everyone plays a role in systems of discrimination. The people who actively discriminate, yes, but also the people who stay silent, the people who look away, the people who benefit from the system without questioning it. We all have responsibility. How do I do better? By doing what you're doing now, by refusing to stay silent when you see unfairness, by treating everyone with dignity, by continuing to question and grow. Jessica smiled. And by forgiving yourself for being human and imperfect, because we all are. That evening, Jessica sat in her small apartment looking at the before and after of her life. A year ago, she had been comfortable, confident, and completely unaware of the harm she caused. Now she lived simply, worked hard, and spent her days helping others grow. She thought about Min-Jun Park, the man who could have destroyed her career, but chose instead to offer her transformation. She thought about the ground services crew who had welcomed her despite knowing her past. She thought about Dr. Yoon, who had guided her through the painful work of self-examination. She thought about all the employees she had trained, all the conversations she had facilitated, all the small moments of change she had witnessed. Her phone buzzed with a text from Min-Jun. "Great work today. I'm proud of how far you've come." Jessica smiled and typed her response. "Thank you for believing I could. Thank you for giving me the chance to prove you right." She looked at her reflection in the window, seeing not the person she had been, but the person she was becoming. Still imperfect. Still learning, but committed to doing better, to treating every person with the dignity they deserved, to creating spaces where others could grow and change just as she had. The journey wasn't over. It would never truly be over. Growth was a lifelong process, not a destination. But Jessica had learned something valuable. Transformation was possible. People could change, but only if they were willing to do the hard, humble work of looking honestly at themselves and choosing to become better. And if she could change, anyone could. That was the message she would carry forward. The truth she would share with every person she trained, every employee who struggled with their own biases, every individual who wondered if they could ever be better than they were. Change was possible. Dignity was universal, and everyone deserved the chance to become their best self. Even people who had caused harm, even people who had failed, even people like her. That was Min-Jun Park's gift to her. Not just a second chance, but a new understanding of what it meant to be human, imperfect, and capable of growth. And now it was her gift to pass forward to everyone she met. 1 year after that fateful flight, Min-Jun held a company-wide meeting at the aviation headquarters. He stood before hundreds of employees and shared his vision for the company's future. "When I bought this company, I did it because I experienced discrimination on one of our flights. I could have simply fired the employee responsible and moved on. But I chose to offer a different path, an opportunity for transformation rather than just punishment. I want to tell you why." He gestured to Jessica, who stood to the side of the stage. Jessica Torres was the flight attendant who discriminated against me. She treated me with contempt because of the color of my skin and the clothes I wore. She made assumptions about who I was and what I deserved. Her behavior was unacceptable. The room was silent. Every eye was on Jessica. But I gave her a choice, Min-Jun continued. I asked her to do the hardest thing possible, to truly examine herself, to confront her biases, to change from the inside out. And she did it. She spent 6 months doing difficult, humbling work. She attended training sessions, learned about the harm she had caused, and fundamentally changed her perspective. He looked at Jessica with respect. Today, Jessica is our Director of Diversity and Inclusion. She's developed training programs that are transforming our company culture. She's helped dozens of employees recognize and address their own biases. She's become one of the most valuable members of our leadership team, not despite her past mistakes, but because of them, because she learned from them. Minjun addressed the entire room. We all make mistakes. We all have biases, whether we recognize them or not. The question is what we do with them. Do we hide them? Defend them? Or do we have the courage to examine them, acknowledge the harm they cause, and do the work to change? He smiled. This company is going to be a place where change is possible, where accountability doesn't just mean punishment, where we believe in people's capacity to grow. But that requires everyone here to commit to doing their own work, examining their own biases, treating every person with dignity. After the meeting, several employees approached Jessica. Some thanked her for her honesty. Others asked how they could examine their own biases. A few shared their own stories of discrimination, both as perpetrators and victims. One young ground services worker, a woman named Rosa, waited until everyone else had left. Miss Torres, I need to tell you something. A year ago, I was on your crew for the flight where you treated Mr. Park badly. I'm Haewon Choi. Do you remember me? Jessica's eyes widened. The young flight attendant who had looked uncomfortable, who had tried to intervene. Haewon, yes. I remember you tried to stop me. I didn't try hard enough, Haewon said. I saw what you were doing and I knew it was wrong, but I was scared of you. You were my supervisor. I was new. I didn't want to cause problems. So I stayed silent. I've been carrying guilt about that for a year. Jessica pulled her into a hug. You reported what happened afterward. You did the right thing in the end. Don't carry guilt for my actions. But I could have stopped it in the moment. Maybe, or maybe I wouldn't have listened. Haewon. One thing I've learned is that everyone plays a role in systems of discrimination. The people who actively discriminate, yes, but also the people who stay silent. The people who look away. The people who benefit from the system without questioning it. We all have responsibility. How do I do better? By doing what you're doing now. By refusing to stay silent when you see unfairness. By treating everyone with dignity. By continuing to question and grow. Jessica smiled. And by forgiving yourself for being human and imperfect. Because we all are. That evening, Jessica sat in her small apartment looking at the before and after of her life. A year ago, she had been comfortable, confident, and completely unaware of the harm she caused. Now she lived simply, worked hard, and spent her days helping others grow. She thought about Minjun Park, the man who could have destroyed her career, but chose instead to offer her transformation. She thought about the ground services crew who had welcomed her despite knowing her past. She thought about Dr. Yoon, who had guided her through the painful work of self-examination. She thought about all the employees she had trained, all the conversations she had facilitated, all the small moments of change she had witnessed. Her phone buzzed with a text from Minjun. Great work today. I'm proud of how far you've come. Jessica smiled and typed her response. Thank you for believing I could. Thank you for giving me the chance to prove you right. She looked at her reflection in the window, seeing not the person she had been, but the person she was becoming. Still imperfect. Still learning, but committed to doing better, to treating every person with the dignity they deserved, to creating spaces where others could grow and change just as she had. The journey wasn't over. It would never truly be over. Growth was a lifelong process, not a destination. But Jessica had learned something valuable. Transformation was possible. People could change, but only if they were willing to do the hard, humble work of looking honestly at themselves and choosing to become better. And if she could change, anyone could. That was the message she would carry forward, the truth she would share with every person she trained, every employee who struggled with their own biases, every individual who wondered if they could ever be better than they were. Change was possible. Dignity was universal. And everyone deserved the chance to become their best self. Even people who had caused harm. Even people who had failed. Even people like her. That was Minjun Park's gift to her. not just a second chance, but a new understanding of what it meant to be human, imperfect, and capable of growth. And now it was her gift to pass forward to everyone she met.